Hello Year 7, welcome to Lesson 3 of Developing Games in Scratch. So just to recap, Video 1 and Video 2 we looked at the introduction to developing games and programming, and in Lesson 2 we looked at starting our own Pacman game. We hopefully would have developed a really good maze and a Pacman that has an open and closed mouth, and you should have developed a script that makes the mouth open and close, so we've created a nice illusion there. In today's lesson, we're going to learn about selection, and we're going to be using geometry to change Pacman's direction. So when the user presses up, down, left, and right, Pacman is going to change his orientation. We're going to make Pacman move, and as an extension, for those of you who are making really good progress, finding this really easy, I'm going to explain to you how you could use a speed variable within your game. You could use a speed variable, for example, to change how fast Pacman moves depending on if he's touched a special sprite, for example. So if we look here, we've got the definition of selection. Selection is when a question is asked within a computer program. Depending on the result of the answer, the program will take a particular course and execute the relevant instruction. What does that actually mean? So let's look at this practical example first. This is a flow diagram which is modeling what a chef would do when checking the temperature of tomatoes. So before he finishes moving on to the next stage of making his spaghetti bolognese, he needs to check the temperature of the tomatoes. So this is the selection section here. So he's checking the temperature of the tomatoes. If the tomatoes are less than 32 degrees, he will cover the tomatoes and continue cooking. However, if it is more than 32 degrees, he is able to uncover the tomatoes and move on to the next stage because they've reached the right temperature. Now you could use a practical example for any instance really. Think about boiling water. You will only pour the boiling water into the cup once the kettle is boiled. Okay, so it's a decision. If it's boiled, move on. If it's not, continue boiling. So you're taking two different routes. So those are both practical examples. What about an actual program? So here we've got two questions. What is the rate for a 16-year-old? What is the rate for a 37-year-old? Now you've got a larger diagram here. Now this diagram is modeling how a program should behave once the users enter their age and fare, and depending on their age it will either give them a rate of 0, 0.7 or 1. Now I'm going to go through the flow diagram with you, but I want to test you first. What is the rate for a 16-year-old? I'm going to give you a few seconds before I go through it. What is the rate for a 16-year-old? You don't need to write this down, just see if you can figure it out. If you need to take longer, then of course pause the video so that you don't get the answer straight away. Okay, so what is the rate for a 16-year-old? So the user inputs 16 here. Is age less than 12? Is 16 less than 12? No, it's not. It's more than. So it's going to go to this side, isn't it? It's not going to take that away. That route, sorry. Then we've got another question here. Is the age less than 24 or bigger than 24? Well, 16 is less than, so it's going to go to this side, which means the rate is 0.7. So well done if you got that right. Okay, what about if the user enters 37? Same again. 37 is larger than 12, so it goes down to this side. 37 is larger than 24, so it's not going to go to the left, it will go to the right, and then it will make the rate 1. So once again, well done if you got those correct. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to Scratch, and we're going to develop our own selection scripts to change the direction of Pacman. Okay. So I'm going to start here just in case you've ended the lesson before, so I can show you how to reopen your own Scratch games. So click on Create. And again, you close this, and then you go to File, Load from your computer, and then you just need to find where you saved it last. I called mine Pacman, and it should open your last or previously designed game. So just to show you what I've done, I've got my maze here, which probably and hopefully isn't as good as yours. If I press the green flag, his mouth should open and close at a decent rate, and I've changed mine to 0.5 seconds. So this is a continuous loop. But now we need to try and change the direction that Pacman can move, because currently he's just facing one direction and he's not moving. So what we need to do first is get an events script, which is of course when the green flag is clicked, you can drag that over there. Next you need a control script, and we're going to have a forever, which is another loop, so it's going to always happen while the game's running. And then I'm going to just for now get one if statement. Okay, so forever if what? I'm going to do up first and then right. So forever if up is pressed, so to find when a user presses on a key, go to sensing. You can grab this one here. Now it says space, but that's fine because we can change that. So we're not going to use space, we're going to say if up arrow pressed. Then we go to motions because we want the character to move in some way. And we're not going to move 10 steps, we're not going to turn 15 degrees, we are going to scroll down so we can find the right one. Point in direction. Now yours will say point in direction 90 like my one does, but of course we don't want it to be 90, do we? We want it to face up, which is 0. Then we're going to do it again. Then we go down to controls. We get another if statement. We're going to put it just underneath this one here. Then sensing. And this time it's going to be right. Then motion. Point in direction 90. Okay, so that's already done for us, which is fantastic. So I can check that now. So pressing up now. Faces up, right, up, right, up, right, up, right. Fantastic, so that works. What I want you to do now, I want you to pause the video and I want you to see if you can replicate what we've just done, but for the other two directions. Okay, so we should have up, down, left, and right. So I want you to pause the video now and try it for yourself. Okay, so hopefully you've paused the video and you would have done something like this. Now, I'm going to show you a quick shortcut to copying and duplicating code. So you can right click and press duplicate, and then you can just drag that underneath here. So we've got up, I'll do down next. Now down is 180. You can just type this in if you want and it should change for you. And then the last one is left, and left is minus 90 or 270. So just to check all of the directions, I'm just going to move the character here, up, down, left, right. Good. So it's moving every single direction. All we need to do now is make it go forward. So to do this, we're going to go back to controls. We're going to get forever. We do need forever. We also need an if, and we need another event. So when the green flag is clicked. Now, if you remember, you should have had an orange dot here. We're going to go to sensing, and we're going to use the orange dot as a sensor, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want Pacman to be able to move through the maze walls. He needs to be following the blue path, and if he touches a wall, he should stop. So we're going to drag this in here, and what are we going to say? So forever if color, then you're going to select this icon here, and then you're going to take your time and select the orange. This may take a bit of time. Perfect. So if color orange is touching blue, so if it's touching the blue, what should we allow Pacman to do? What do you think? What should we do? So if the orange dot is touching blue, what should Pacman be doing? Okay, if you guessed it, fantastic. We should be moving a certain amount of steps. So the higher the steps, the faster Pacman will move. So I'm going to put in 2 for now. I'm going to start the game again. Up, down, fantastic. And if he touches the wall, he should stop. Good. Now, if yours doesn't work, you may need to change the colors so that they correspond with the dot color, and you may also need to change the size of the dot, for example. This is a good time before we move on to just double check that Pacman can get to every part of the maze. So if you look here, for example, my Pacman is not able to get up there, which is not good. So that's something you would need to go in and change. And you can do that by going to backdrops. Finally, for those of you who are making really good progress, we can start introducing variables. So instead of Pacman always moving 2 steps, you may want the value to change. For example, if he touched a special sprite, you could make his speed double, or you can make his speed decrease to make the game harder. To do that, you need to go to variables. You would need to make a variable, assign it a value, and then you can tell your Pacman object to move that amount. So let's say you've created it and it's called speed, it would move speed steps, and then you could change the value of speed throughout your program. Okay, so that is the end of lesson 3. You should have a Pacman that moves up and down, opens and closes his mouth, and stops when it touches the wall. Well done, and in the next lesson we're going to look at developing food sprites that will allow Pacman to eat them and have a score variable that goes up and down.